The EU continues to reduce its economic dependence on Russia. Higher tariffs are expected to be applied to fertilizers and some agricultural products. The regulation also aims to reduce Russia's economic revenues, but can lead to rising food prices in the EU, which is a concern for farmers. A dilemma that we will discuss in this week's EU Decoded.
The tariffs will apply to products from Russia and its neighboring ally Belarus, which has facilitated the military action against Ukraine. Russia supplies 25% of the EU's nitrogen fertilizers, worth 1.3 billion euros per year. From July 1st, these fertilizers will be subject to tariffs ranging from 6.5% this year to levels close to 100% by 2028. In addition, 50% tariffs will be imposed on agri-food products from both countries, such as meat, dairy, fruit and vegetables.
European fertilizer producers are happy to have a bigger market share. However, farmers are worried that the prices of these products will increase, since Russia is a major global producer and sells them at cheaper prices. Let's hear what some Europeans think about this issue.
Ανεξαρτήτως κόστους, η χρήση χημικών λιπασμάτων είναι απαραίτητη, διότι χωρίς αυτά η παραγωγή θα είναι πάρα πολύ μειωμένη.
Τώρα πάμε εμείς, ψάχνουμε για άλλες λύσεις, ψάχνουμε για οργανική ουσία, για κοπρίες και τέτοια.
E, portanto, se as medidas militares ou na parte militar não estão a resultar, a parte económica terá que entrar em funcionamento. E daí...
É prejuízo para todas as partes, quer para a parte da Rússia, que não consegue colocar os fertilizantes, quer por parte dos europeus que precisam dos fertilizantes e não têm fertilizantes para usar.
Haver uma compensação, porque quem não podem ser os agricultores e o consumidor final a ficar com esse encargo.
Euronews reporter Gerardo Fortuna will help us understand the impacts of these measures. The EU has imposed barriers on imports of Russian goods since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine 3 years ago. Why now the focus on fertilizers?
There's a strong moral and strategical rationale. Russia imposes 23.5% export tax on fertilizers, which means that by buying these products, the EU is indirectly financing the war in Ukraine. And of course, by imposing tariffs now, the main goal is to make unattractive for Russians to export these products, but also to European farmers to buy these products.
The European fertilizer sector welcomed the move, saying that they have been badly hit since the war. What is at stake for the domestic sector in terms of producing fertilizers?
The European fertilizer manufacturers have deeply concerned about the Russian imports because, of course, they're cheaper, particularly the nitrogen-based one. And despite the war, there's been an increase of imports from Russia. There's also an environmental aspect because the production of fertilizers has roughly half of the carbon intensity of the Russian manufacturing of fertilizers. So by importing this fertilizer from Russia, we also drive emission up.
On the other hand, farmers are worried. Why are they so worried, and can the European Commission assume some mitigation measures for them?
You have to balance the geostrategic interest with the real things that farmers are suffering. Of course, by imposing tariffs, you distort the market and you eventually drive prices up. There are some mitigation measures. At the moment, they're not considered good enough by European farmers to cope with the expected increase of prices. The most likely scenario is that actually farmers will be squeezed by the increase in production costs and the impossibility to raise the final price for consumers.
Europe remains highly import dependent. For nitrogen fertilizers, imports accounts for 32% of demand. To reduce the risk of price spikes, the EU could reduce tariffs on other fertilizer suppliers, such as the US and countries in North Africa and Central Asia. Finally, the tariffs will not affect the transit of fertilizers and agri-food exports from Russia and Belarus to third countries in order to avoid disruption of supplies, especially to developing countries.
Our guest is MEP Eneze Vaidere from Centre-Right EPP Group and rapporteur on this regulation. Will the EU fertilizers producers have enough time to ramp up their production in order to meet demand and to avoid a price spike of these products?
You know, our fertilizers producers in European Union already now have lost a lot of their plants. They stopped their activities due to these cheap imports from Russia. And now, as we calculated, there's at least 3 million tons spare capacity over the 8 million tons, which is has been exported to in other countries. If something happens, we can also turn to another mitigation sources, for example, to lift some export import duties from another countries.
Farmers fear rising food prices in terms of their own production. So can this be avoided or offset somehow?
Commission is obliged to monitor every month prices, because prices, this is also our interest. You, me, you are paying for agricultural products, and if the prices rises, we will be paying more. So Commission is obliged to monitor every month and to do something if this price increase will be dramatic.
This could be subsidies or other
could be subsidies. From the beginning of the war already, if I'm not mistaken, some 500 billion or euros have been spent already to help the farmers. Commission knows what to do.
The EU has recently decided to cut all Russian fuel imports by 2028. Should the EU think about other ways in order to choke Russia's economy?
You know, in my eyes, we have to do much more. And I'm enthusiastic, and I provided also the plan for European Commission how to confiscate the sources of Russian assets, which are mostly in Belgium's bank. Now we can use for Ukraine only profit from these assets, but confiscation of these assets could help Ukraine more.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Madam. Gas is an essential ingredient for fertilizer production. So the EU is indirectly targeting these Russian assets as well. However, Russia is the world's largest producer of fertilizers, with its main markets being Brazil, India, the US, China and Indonesia. Even so, for the EU, these are not only economic imperatives, but also ethical ones, given the war in Ukraine.